"Take my sister and don't leave us alone," begged the little girl. The afternoon was loud and busy, filled with the noise of people moving in every direction. Cars passed by, horns sounded, and shopkeepers called out to customers. In the middle of all this, most people were focused on their own lives. They walked fast, looked at their phones, or talked with friends. No one expected anything unusual to happen that day. He was just like everyone else. A young man returning from work, tired and thinking about home. His mind was full of simple thoughts: what to eat for dinner, how long the traffic would take, and whether tomorrow would be easier. As he walked near a small roadside area, he noticed two children sitting close to the wall of an old building. At first, he almost ignored them. Children sitting outside was not something new. Poverty was common, and people had learned to look away. But something made him slow down. The older child was a little girl, no more than 7 years old. Her clothes were worn and slightly too big, as if they had belonged to someone else before her. Dust covered her shoes, and her hair was tied back loosely. In her arms she held a baby, her sister. The baby looked tired and restless, wrapped in a thin cloth that was not enough for comfort. The little girl's arms were tense, as if she feared letting go even for a moment. He stopped a few steps away and looked again. The girl was not crying. That was what felt strange. She wasn't asking for money or food like other children he had seen before. She was just sitting there, watching people pass, her eyes alert and careful. Her body was positioned in a way that protected the baby from the crowd. When their eyes met, something changed. The little girl stood up slowly. She adjusted her grip on the baby and took a few small steps toward him. Her feet hesitated, as if she wasn't sure whether she should speak. He felt uncomfortable and kind at the same time. He thought she might ask for help, maybe food or some coins. He reached into his pocket without thinking, but before he could say anything, she spoke. Her voice was soft but clear. "Please take my sister." He froze. For a moment he thought he had heard wrong. He looked around, expecting an adult to appear, maybe a mother nearby, maybe someone playing a cruel joke, but no one came. The crowd continued moving as if nothing important was happening. She looked up at him again, her eyes wide and serious. "Please," she said again. "Don't leave us alone." There was no drama in her voice, no shouting, no tears. That calmness hurt more than crying would have. It sounded like she had said those words many times before, maybe in her head, maybe out loud to people who never stopped. He felt a tight feeling in his chest. His hand dropped from his pocket. Money suddenly felt useless. He bent down slightly to be at her level. "Where is your mother?" he asked gently. The girl looked away for a second, then back at him. "She doesn't come," she said. That was all. The baby shifted in her arms and made a small sound. The girl immediately held her closer, rocking her softly the way a grown person would. It was clear she had done this many times before. He didn't know what to say next. His thoughts were confused. Take her sister. What did that even mean? He was a stranger. He had no idea what he could or should do. People passed behind him, some glancing briefly, others not looking at all. Life continued around them, careless and fast. "How long have you been here?" he asked. The girl shrugged. "Today." "Yesterday, many days." Her answer was simple, but it carried a heavy meaning. Time didn't matter to her anymore. Days had blended together into one long waiting. He looked at the baby more closely. The child's face was thin, her eyes half closed. She looked hungry, tired, and far too quiet for a baby. That scared him more than anything. "Have you eaten?" he asked. The girl nodded quickly, then shook her head. "She hasn't," she said, pointing to the baby. "I saved mine for her." That sentence hit him hard. A child choosing hunger so her sister could eat. He felt shame for every time he had complained about small problems in his own life. He stood up slowly, unsure of what to do next. Part of him wanted to run away, not because he didn't care, but because caring felt too big. Helping them meant responsibility, questions, and consequences. Ignoring them meant walking away from something he would never forget. He looked down again. The girl was watching him closely now. She could sense hesitation. Her grip on the baby tightened. "You won't come back if you go," she said quietly. It wasn't a question, it was experience speaking. He swallowed. "I'm not leaving," he said, though he wasn't fully sure what that meant yet. Her shoulders relaxed just a little. He sat down on the low step near them. He asked their names. The girl told him her name and then pointed to the baby, saying her sister's name with a small smile. It was the first sign of softness he had seen on her face. As they talked, he learned small things. They slept wherever they could. Sometimes near relatives, sometimes outside. Sometimes food came, sometimes it didn't. Adults promised help, then disappeared. The girl didn't complain. She stated facts, the way someone does when they have learned not to expect more. Each word made the situation feel heavier. He noticed how she kept looking around while talking, always alert. She was still protecting her sister, even while speaking to him. There was no space for trust, only careful hope. When he stood up again, she stood too, panic flashing across her face. "You said you won't leave," she said quickly. "I won't," he replied. "I just need to do something." He went to a nearby shop and bought food and water. When he returned, her eyes followed him the entire time, as if afraid he would disappear into the crowd like everyone else. He gave her the food first. She immediately offered it to the baby. Only after making sure her sister was eating did she take a small bite herself. He watched quietly, feeling something change inside him. This was no longer just a moment. It was a turning point. As the sun began to lower, shadows stretched across the street. The noise didn't fade, but the air felt heavier. He knew this day would stay with him forever. And the little girl, holding her sister tightly, waited, hoping that this time the promise would be real. The next morning came quietly, but for the little girl, mornings were never calm. She woke before the sun, holding her sister close, listening to the sounds around her. Even in sleep, her body stayed alert. She had learned that danger often came when you were not ready. That morning the man returned. She saw him before he saw her. He walked carefully, looking around as if afraid he might be too late. When their eyes met, she did not smile, but something inside her eased. He had come back. People often said they would, but they rarely did. "You came," she said simply. "I told you I would," he replied. She nodded. Promises were not words to her. They were actions. Only actions mattered. They sat together again, away from the crowd. The baby slept against the girl's chest, her breathing slow and light. The girl's arms were tired, but she never complained. She had learned that comfort was something you gave, not something you asked for. As the day moved forward, the man began to understand more. Not because she told long stories, but because of the small details she shared without realizing how heavy they were. Their life had not always been like this. There was a time when they had a home. Not a good one, but a place with walls and a door. The girl remembered it clearly. She remembered the sound of rain hitting the roof and the way the baby would cry at night. Their mother was there then, tired and often silent. Their father came and went like a shadow. Some days he was kind. Other days he wasn't there at all. Then things changed. The girl did not understand everything, only that food became less, voices became louder, and adults became strangers even when they lived under the same roof. One day they left. No goodbye, no plan. Just walking until there was nowhere else to go. Since then, the girl became something she never chose to be. She became the protector. She learned how to read faces quickly, who was safe, who was not. She learned where to sit so people could see them but not touch them. She learned how to rock her sister so she would sleep even when hunger made her cry. She learned that if she looked brave enough, people would leave them alone. At night, when the baby slept, the girl stayed awake. She counted breaths. She listened. She prayed quietly in words she barely understood. The man listened as she spoke, his chest heavy. Every sentence sounded like something no child should ever have to say. "What about school?" he asked carefully. The girl looked confused. "I teach her," she said, pointing to the baby. "I sing, I talk, I show her things." He realized then that school was not a place in her mind. Learning was survival, teaching was love. As the day went on, he noticed something else. The girl never asked for anything for herself. If he offered water, she gave it to the baby first. If he offered food, she broke it in half. Her eyes always checked her sister before she checked her own needs. That night, when it became darker and colder, the man made a decision. He could not fix everything, but he could not leave them as they were. He spoke gently. "There are people whose job is to help children," he said. "They can give you a safe place." The girl stiffened. She had heard words like that before. "They take us away," she said quietly. "They separate us." Her voice shook for the first time since he met her. He chose his words carefully. "I will not let that happen," he said. "I will stay. I will make sure you are together." She studied his face for a long time. Children like her learn to read truth in eyes, not in voices. After a moment she nodded, not fully trusting but willing to try. That night, as they waited, memories filled her mind. She remembered carrying her sister for the first time, how small she felt, how afraid. She remembered promising herself that no matter what happened, she would not let go, even when her arms hurt, even when she was tired, even when she felt invisible. She had asked many adults for help before. Some gave food, some gave advice, most walked away, but none had stayed. This one had stayed. The next day brought questions, papers, and serious faces. People spoke slowly and kindly, but the girl still held her sister tightly. Her fingers pressed into the baby's clothes as if she feared someone might pull her away. The man stayed close, reminding her with his presence that she was not alone. Hours passed. Nothing felt fast enough. Every minute felt like a test of her courage. Finally, they were taken to a clean, quiet place. It was not perfect. It was unfamiliar, but it was warm. There was food, there was a bed. The girl stood at the door, afraid to step inside. "It's okay," the man said softly. She looked at the baby, then stepped forward. That night, for the first time in a long while, the girl slept deeply. Her body finally believed that it was safe enough to rest, even if only for a few hours. But even in sleep, her arms stayed wrapped around her sister, because some promises are not spoken. They are lived. The days that followed were not easy, even though the place was safe. Safety felt strange to the little girl. It felt unfamiliar, like wearing clothes that did not yet belong to her. The room was clean, the bed was soft, and food came at regular times. But her heart did not relax, not fully. Every morning she woke up quickly, sitting straight and checking her sister first. If the baby was breathing, if her eyes opened, if she made a sound, only then did the girl calm down a little. The people around them noticed this. They spoke kindly, moved slowly, and tried not to surprise her. Still, she watched every movement closely. The man visited often. Sometimes he came with food or small toys for the baby. Sometimes he came with nothing at all, just to sit and talk. The girl began to understand that he was not there out of duty. He came because he cared. But caring brought its own pain. At night, when the building grew quiet, the man struggled with his thoughts. He had returned to his own home, his own bed, his own normal life. Yet nothing felt normal anymore. Every sound reminded him of the girl's calm voice when she begged him not to leave. Every meal reminded him of how she saved food for her sister. He questioned himself constantly. Had he done the right thing? Would the system protect them or fail them like it had failed so many others? He felt heavy with responsibility, even though he was told he had already done more than enough. But in his heart, he knew one thing clearly: enough was not enough. The girl began to open up slowly, but only in pieces. She spoke more when the baby slept. She spoke more when she felt unseen, when she thought no one was judging her. She shared small memories, walking long distances, waiting in lines, sitting quietly so no one would notice them. Sometimes she asked questions that showed how much she did not understand the world. "Why do people promise things they do mean?" she asked one afternoon. The man did not have an easy answer. He thought for a moment. "Sometimes people want to help," he said carefully. "But they are afraid of how hard it will be." She nodded as if this confirmed something she already knew. "Fear makes people leave," she said. He felt those words settle deep inside him. Meetings happened often. Adults talked in rooms filled with papers and quiet voices. The girl did not understand all the words, but she understood the feeling. Decisions were being made about her life, about her sister's life, by people who had not lived their nights. She sat very still during those meetings, holding the baby, answering questions politely. She did not cry, she did not argue. She had learned that being quiet made adults more comfortable, but inside her a storm waited. One day, after a long meeting, she asked the man something that surprised him. "Will I have to give her away?" she asked, her voice low. He felt his chest tighten. "No," he said firmly, "you will not." She looked at him for a long time, searching his face the way she always did. "Everyone says that," she replied, "until they don't." That night the baby cried for a long time. Nothing seemed to calm her. The girl walked back and forth, whispering softly, singing songs she had made up during long nights on the street. Her arms ached, but she did not stop. A worker offered to help, to hold the baby for a while. The girl hesitated. Her body turned away before her mind could decide. Then she slowly handed the baby over, watching every move, every breath. It was the first small step. The man watched this moment quietly. He understood how much strength it took to let go, even for a minute. As weeks passed, routines formed. The baby grew healthier. The girl began to eat without hiding food. She slept longer, small changes but important ones. Still, fear remained close. One afternoon, something went wrong. The girl overheard a conversation she was not meant to hear. Words like temporary in different places floated through the hallway. Her heart began to race. She grabbed her sister and hid in a corner of the room, shaking. When the man arrived later that day, he found her silent, her eyes wide, her arms locked tight around the baby. "They're going to take her," she said. "I know they are." He sat beside her slowly. "No one is taking her," he said. "I promise." Her voice broke for the first time. Promises don't stop people. He realized then that comfort alone was not enough. She needed proof. So he did what he had been afraid to do. He spoke up. He questioned decisions. He stayed late. He made calls. He argued calmly but firmly. He reminded everyone that these were not just files or cases. They were two lives that had only ever had each other. It was exhausting. He felt tired in ways he had never felt before. But each time he thought about stopping, he remembered the girl's words. Fear makes people leave. He refused to be afraid. The girl noticed the change. She noticed the way people spoke differently around him. She noticed how often he came. Slowly, the tightness in her shoulders eased. One evening, as the baby slept peacefully, the girl spoke again. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. He thought carefully. "Because someone should have helped sooner," he said, "and because you asked." She looked down at her sister, then back at him. "If you leave one day," she said, "I will understand." He felt a lump in his throat. "I hope I don't have to," he replied. That night, the girl slept holding the baby's hand instead of her whole body. It was a small change. But it meant something. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she did not have to fight alone forever. And for the man, the weight on his chest turned into something else. Not fear, not guilt, but purpose. The story was far from over. But they were no longer standing still. Time moved forward, but not in a straight line. Some days felt calm and hopeful, while others felt heavy and uncertain. The little girl learned that progress did not always mean happiness. Sometimes it meant waiting, sometimes it meant fear, and sometimes it meant being brave even when she was tired of being brave. The place where they stayed began to feel less strange. The walls no longer scared her. The bed no longer felt like something that could disappear overnight. She learned the sounds of the building, the footsteps of the workers, the rhythm of the day. Still, she never fully relaxed. Part of her stayed awake inside, always ready. The baby changed the most. Her cheeks grew fuller. Her eyes followed movement. She laughed for the first time one morning when the girl made a silly face without thinking. The sound surprised both of them. The girl froze, then laughed too, a soft and uncertain sound, as if she was not sure she was allowed to feel joy. The man noticed everything. He noticed how the girl now sat with her back against the chair instead of the wall. He noticed how she no longer hid food. He noticed how she sometimes forgot to watch the door for a few minutes at a time. These small changes told him more than any report ever could. But then came the hard part. One afternoon, the girl was called into a room with serious adults. The baby was taken to another room for a checkup. The separation was meant to be short, but it felt endless to the girl. Her hands shook as she sat alone, staring at the door. When the adults spoke, their voices were calm, but the words felt sharp. They talked about plans, about next steps, about what might be best. The girl did not hear most of it. Her mind was focused on one thing. Her sister was not in her arms. When the meeting ended, she ran down the hallway, ignoring voices calling her name. She found the baby safe, sleeping peacefully. Relief hit her so suddenly that her legs nearly gave out. That night, she did not sleep. The fear came back stronger than before. Fear that safety was temporary. Fear that love always came with limits. Fear that no matter how hard she tried, the world could still take things away. The man arrived the next day and saw the change immediately. The girl was quieter. Her eyes were darker. She spoke less and held her sister tighter. "They talked to me," she said finally. He nodded. "I know. They didn't say yes," she continued. "They didn't say no." He understood what that meant. Uncertainty was sometimes worse than bad news. "They are still deciding," he said. "That doesn't mean you are losing anything." She looked at him. "It means I might." Her honesty hurt because it was true. Days passed like this. Waiting days. The kind of days that stretch long and slow. The girl filled her time caring for the baby, helping with small tasks and sitting quietly. The workers tried to encourage her, but she stayed careful. Hope was dangerous. One evening the baby became ill. Nothing serious, but enough to scare the girl. The baby cried for hours, refusing to sleep. The girl walked back and forth, her arms aching, her voice hoarse from whispering comfort. When a worker offered to help, the girl shook her head. "She needs me," she said. The man arrived late that night and saw the girl pacing the room, exhaustion written on her face. "You need rest," he said gently. She shook her head again. "If I sleep, I might not hear her." He sat beside her. "I'll listen," he said. "You can sleep." She hesitated. Trust did not come easily, but her body was too tired to fight anymore. Slowly, carefully, she sat down. Her eyes stayed open for a long time. Finally, they closed. She slept sitting up, with her hand resting on the baby's chest. The man stayed there, listening to the baby's breathing, just as the girl had done so many nights before. In that moment, he understood the full weight of what she carried. Not just responsibility, but fear. Fear of failing the one person who depended on her completely. The next morning, the baby was better. The girl woke up confused at first, then realized she had slept without guarding every second. She looked embarrassed, then relieved. "You stayed," she said. "Yes," he replied. That day something shifted. The girl began to speak more freely. She asked questions about normal things, about school, about friends, about what children did when they were not surviving. "Do kids really play?" she asked once. "Yes," the man said. "They do." She thought about that quietly, as if imagining something from a book. A few days later, another meeting happened. This time, the man was there from the beginning. He sat beside the girl, not behind her. When she spoke, he listened. When she was quiet, he made sure her silence was respected. The decision was not perfect. Nothing ever was, but it was a step forward. The sisters would stay together, not forever promised, not without conditions, but together. The girl did not celebrate. She did not cry. She simply nodded, holding her sister closer. That night she asked the man a question she had never asked before. "What happens when I grow up?" she asked. He smiled softly. "Then you get to live for yourself too." She thought about that. "I don't know how," she admitted. "You'll learn," he said, "just like you learned everything else." As weeks turned into months, life continued. The girl started learning letters. She learned numbers. She learned how to laugh without fear. Slowly, carefully, she began to let others help with the baby. She was still strong, but she was no longer alone. And even though the future remained uncertain, one thing was clear now. She was no longer invisible. She was seen. She was heard. And she was finally, slowly, beginning to believe that staying did not always mean losing. The seasons changed quietly, without asking permission. Days grew warmer, then cooler again, and life slowly took a shape that felt more steady than before. For the little girl, time no longer felt like something dangerous. It no longer felt like a countdown to loss. It became something that passed gently, one day at a time. The place they lived in was not perfect, but it was safe. The girl learned its routines so well that she could tell the time by the sounds in the hallway. She woke up when the light came through the window, not from fear but from habit. She no longer jumped at every noise. She still checked on her sister first thing each morning, but now she smiled when she saw her eyes open. The baby was growing fast. She began to crawl, then stand, then take small steps while holding onto furniture. Every new movement felt like a miracle to the girl. She clapped quietly, afraid to draw too much attention, then laughed when the baby laughed back. Their laughter filled the room with something warm and real. The girl was changing too. She started attending classes. At first, she sat near the door, watching everything. She kept her bag close and her back straight, ready to leave if needed. But slowly she learned that no one was going to send her away. She learned letters, then words. When she read her first sentence aloud, her voice shook with pride. The man was there to hear it. He visited less often now, not because he cared less, but because he wanted them to learn independence. Still, he never disappeared completely. He came on important days. He came when the girl felt unsure. He came when the baby took her first steps and fell into his arms, laughing. "You're growing," he told them both. The girl nodded. "She is," she said. "And you are too," he added. She did not argue this time. There were still hard days. Sometimes the girl woke from dreams that left her breathless. Dreams of waiting. Dreams of being alone again. On those mornings, she held her sister a little tighter and stayed quiet longer than usual. But now, she knew how to breathe through the fear. She knew it would pass. One evening she sat by the window watching the sky turn dark. The man sat beside her. "Do you remember the day we met?" she asked. He nodded. "I do." "I thought you would leave," she said honestly. "Everyone does." He looked at her carefully. "I almost did," he admitted. She turned to him, surprised. "Why didn't you?" He thought for a moment. "Because you didn't ask for help for yourself," he said. "You asked for her." She looked down at her sister, who was playing quietly on the floor. "I still would," she said. "I know," he replied. The girl was quiet for a long time, then spoke again. "One day," she said slowly, "I want to help someone too." He smiled. "You already are." As time passed, the official papers were completed. The decisions were finalized. The future became clearer. The sisters would stay together. They would continue living in a place where they were safe and cared for. The uncertainty that once controlled every thought slowly lost its power. The girl did not celebrate when she heard the news. She simply sat down and breathed. A deep breath she had been holding for years. That night she slept without waking even once. The baby slept beside her, peaceful and warm. In the morning the girl woke up smiling. Life did not suddenly become easy. There were rules, responsibilities, and moments of frustration. There were days when she felt behind other children, days when she felt different. But she was learning that being different did not mean being broken. She made friends, real ones. She learned how to play, not just how to survive. She learned how to ask for help without fear. She learned that needing others did not make her weak. One afternoon, she and the man sat together again, watching her sister run across the yard. "She doesn't remember," the girl said quietly, "what it was like before." "That's a good thing," he replied. She nodded. "But I do." He looked at her. "That doesn't have to hurt forever," he said. She thought about that. "It doesn't," she said after a moment. "Not like it used to." The girl grew older, stronger, and wiser than her years. She never lost her sense of care, but she learned how to care for herself too. She learned that her life was more than protection. It was also possibility. Years later, when she was asked to write about someone who changed her life, she did not hesitate. She wrote about a day when she was small and scared and brave all at once, about holding her sister with everything she had, about asking a stranger for help because there was no one else left to ask. She ended her writing with a simple sentence: "Sometimes being seen is how life begins." The man kept that page, and the little girl, no longer little, walked forward into her future, carrying love instead of fear, strength instead of silence, and hope instead of waiting. The story did not end with perfection. It ended with truth, and that was enough.